So I just got off a call about Modern Warfare 4. Obviously, we have some trailer stuff. They just put out a little bit of a blog. The unfortunate part about the blog, and the good thing for me, is that there was tons of stuff included specifically about the technology that they're using in this game that fixes pretty much a lot of, or most of, if not all, the movement type problems and systems that we had in Modern Warfare 2 that I think were generally bad or not well received, and adopt some of the more positive changes that have come out of MW3, keeping still some of the foundational things from MW 2019, and even maybe incorporating some small things from BO6 and BO7 that kind of intermingle into the game. I did already put out a video of the loadout system, kind of how that part works, talking about the attachments, the guns, and all that stuff. If you want to check that out on the channel. The main thing I wanted to talk about are some of these systems that help with the fluidity, the way the aiming systems work, and a lot of those types of things. I'll read through some of the stuff the blog says, and then I'll expand on that. It says ballistic authority, and the whole point of this particular aspect is they wanted to reevaluate everything when it comes to the way the guns work in the game, take their learnings, and then build them to be as good as they could possibly be. So it says a new weapon first technology stack unifies precision aiming, physical handling, realistic audio, propagation, enhanced visibility, and smarter combat perception into the most authentic modern warfare gunplay yet. Bullet trajectory, weapon motion, operator stance, camera, audio, FOV, and target visibility all line up in one highly tuned combat fidelity system. The promise is simple: no bloom, no guesswork, and no doubt every shot tells the truth. Bloom has been removed, and this is very specific to the regular bloom that happens with hipfire. Not talking about the ADS bloom that Vanguard had that wasn't good, that they later cut back on and then bled its way into Warzone, and then they had to remove that entirely. That was a bad system. That's the one that Battlefield has, where you shoot even at distance and your bullets go in random spots if you're not standing still or whatever. This one's specifically for the hipfire shots. And one of the problems that they're trying to solve with this, most FPS games have been using an antiquated system, which is the way they explained it. And they've been using the same antiquated system for 20 years. Basically saying that it's an outdated system. Bullets should go where your gun is pointing, versus what they do is have kind of like this cone system. That's pretty much how most games do it. You pull the trigger and the bullet just randomly goes whichever way direction, which doesn't really align in reality with if you actually hip fired a gun. It would go kind of wherever your gun's going. It would still shake quite a bit because, you know, the way you handle the weapon, it wouldn't just go straight, you know, ADS locked in, but the gun would be more representative of where those bullets will go. You can see this a lot if you go to MW 2019 or most of the other CODs. MW 2019, we just happened to use green lasers or whatever like that. You would fire and it would not go where the laser was. You fire again, it wouldn't go where the laser was. And this basically saying that if you equip a laser and your gun's moving like this, when you fire, wherever that laser's at, that's where the bullet's gonna go, which will make it very predictable. But other systems that they have in place will also make the gun more mirror how it would work in real life, which kind of offsets that and balances it. I would imagine it's still going to be pretty accurate, but the main thing is it being more precise and feeling fair. Recoil convergence and weapon handling have been rebuilt to be more directly reflect the player input. This kind of piggybacks on what I was just saying, where wherever that muzzle is, wherever the laser is, wherever in real life, wherever you pull that trigger, where to go, that's where it is. And they said that they're also going to up that sample rate. I don't think that's related to netcode, but I think the current system's in place, wherever it figures out where your gun is in that place, that's where the bullet should go and have that trajectory. So it'll be more representative of the way it would really work. Another system that was really cool is the depth of field visual effect. Basically, this was a way for them to solve one of the biggest problems with their previous iteration of the game, which is MW2. If you lean too much towards the realistic and you get all this smoke and visual effects that are happening on your screen, it makes the game less fun because it just doesn't function the way it should. Makes it hard to read the characters and the situation. They developed a new system. It's also used for the depth of field side, which they're calling visual effects masking. And basically the way it looked in the video that we saw, is pretty much you have muzzle smoke that covers your screen, and normal, that's just part of real like weapon fire. And what happens is the most important part to the player is specifically that middle of where the crosshairs are and or where the optic is looking, right in the middle. And essentially what they've done is they've created a system where that area is generally going to be clear so you can see your target. And instead of making just a hard circle with no smoke, they've done some kind of feathering effect so it still has that visual feel, that it looks like stuff's going on, but it doesn't impair that visibility that you expect when you're actually looking at the target. So that should help significantly. And it's blended well where it's clear, but it doesn't look like it's just a blank spot with no smoke, right? They've done a really good job of balancing that, where you're still going to have that visibility, predictable visibility that you expect without sacrificing that authenticity, which is kind of what they're saying here. And visibly, I thought it looked good. I still got to play it. Some people that did get to play it, as I mentioned in my previous video, I don't know what I said during MW2. I said lots of things. Maybe that got me uninvited to in-person events, but I did get fortunate enough to get on the call, so I was able to actually see some of these things. But I didn't get to get that hands-on feel to say this is how it felt and really look at it from that perspective. So I kind of have to go based off of people now that I've talked to that I know have got to go play, and then also kind of what I saw in the representation of the videos that they were showing. So overall, pretty cool system. And it also looks like they were trying to solve for another issue, which, as we've seen in the past, if you've watched any of mine or any creators settings video, we always turn off depth of field, because what ends up happening is it creates this blurriness and it makes it hard to see targets. And that also isn't really representative, and it doesn't work the way it should work. And apparently there was updates in their engine that very much works in combination with this same system of the visual effects masking, that it'll do the same thing where it'll still maintain that visibility the same way. If you've ever gone to fire a real weapon, when you look through those iron sights and you're looking through the rear sight and focusing on the front sight, it's pretty clear. Maybe the other parts aren't as clear in real life, but instead of getting kind of muddied the way it does in the current iterations of Call of Duty, this will be a clearer system. It still may be the competitive advantage to turn it off completely, but I would imagine that if the system actually works the way that it was demonstrated to us, it'll be one of those things where it'll be a preference based, and you may prefer the immersion because it's still going to allow you to see the target and have that clarity to actually be able to see your target, which is important. They talked about the weapons respond more naturally to player movement, stance changes in the environment, creating more consistent behavior in every engagement. So this specific one was very interesting. It looks like they've taken the idea, whether it is their own or how it got incorporated into BO6 and BO7, with the contextual lean was very like basic, not really like in depth of a movement. With BO6 and BO7, when you come around a wall, like your kind of character does a little contextual lean between certain angles. This one is like taking that base idea and then basically making the super juiced up version of this that applies to more different types of weapons, so that when you hold a pistol, it's going to behave differently, the way your stance is, the way that when you get close to an object, maybe you kind of bring your gun up a little bit because you're too close to the wall. If you're inside a tight space, maybe your character's more like a tactical stance, the way they're holding the weapon, versus if they're out in the open, they're ready for more of a ranged target, and it has that responsive feel to that. In addition to that, the natural part is trying to figure out ways to make it more translate some things to the player information without just muddying up the HUD. This is one thing that I think they ended up solving with the tactical sprint. I'm not a fan of tactical sprint. I don't like that it was in Modern Warfare 2019 and any COD after that. I'm not a fan of it in other games. That's okay. I don't have to like the mechanic, but I think they did find a way to make the mechanic function better. One thing that was a problem previously is when you go into tac sprint, you're like this, and then it's like that. Especially if you're on auto tac sprint, it's literally like this, like that. And then once you're done, it's back down, back that, up. And there's no real perceived relation to how that functions. Like how much tac sprint do you have left? That really has never been conveyed in a realistically good way, other than adding the stamina meter on the bar or on the HUD. and they've decided to figure out a way that makes more sense. And basically how they said it, it will be better representing the player's exhaustion by changing the posture and the cadence of the strides as the player's running out of stamina. So it should be one of these things where it maybe goes up pretty quick. Then when you're running, it's like, oh, I'm out of stamina, instead of, I'm out of stamina. So I think that'll just be more of the immersion component. I don't think that's really like, oh, a big deal. It's more of a quality of life thing, just to make that gunplay more immersive and more realistic. I don't think it hurts gameplay or benefits it other than helping the immersion. So I think that's pretty good. We do have the movement component, which I think this is probably the more interesting part. I think a lot of these systems overlap and build on top of each other and have a good foundational base on how the game's going to play. In terms of the movement and the fluidity, at least based off the visual part of it, I think they did this part masterfully, at least in a demonstration sense. I still got to play it to feel it for myself and figure out what that's all about. But what they did that I'd never really seen in the previous times I've gone out to the studio, and obviously I didn't go out this time, but one thing that they did was they did like a little obstacle course. And based off the presentation, they said this type of obstacle course will be available when the game launches. So if you want to go ahead and try and run the obstacle course, get used to the fluidity, it'll probably be like a tutorial type thing that they did with BO6 and BO7, where you go to the little things. But this one is just like an obstacle course. You got to try and beat their time of 55 seconds or whatever. And to be clear, there's no omni movement. Even though there are omni movement type movements, there's no omni movement, no wall balancing or any of that type of stuff. It's a modern warfare game. And based off the look, it looked like an improved version of what we'd seen in MW19, MW3, and the combination there. And maybe like a hybrid somewhere in there, but tons of improvements. Well, we'll go through them and then we'll expand on them, right? Refined movement systems are designed to support a wide range of play styles, which generally there's either hyper aggressive, more sentinel based, and that's kind of where you go. Obviously, when you get into loadout stuff, you can get a little bit more niche into run and gun versus stealth or whatever. But overall, traversal combat, movement, and gunplay transitions are designed to feel seamless and responsive, preserving momentum while maintaining control under pressure. And this is one of the biggest drawbacks that we had in MW2, is they introduced that ledge hang, which people made tons of joking memes about it, where people do pull-ups and you get stuck in the animation. It's very wonky and slow. And they basically evolved the system. You can do a ledge slide, I think they're called it. I have to look at my notes closely, but basically you can do a shimmy across the ledge, which I'm sure is going to be great for campaign. You probably won't even really use that in multiplayer or anything like that. But it also has the contextual lean type thing, where it depends on the environment, how much space you have. You'll be able to use some stuff with the pistol. But the more important part, at least in terms of my opinion, is that you can completely cancel that animation. And if you just want to mantle, you'll be able to pop up and mantle and maintain your momentum. They give a good example of this, where the guy's running through the street, mantles over a car, and kind of does like a momentum thing, where he kind of grabs momentum over, leaps, and then goes right into a slide. So you're coming up with enough momentum that you could transition to a slide, which is pretty nice. It solves one of the biggest drawbacks of MW2's mantle that still kind of was not honed and dialed in MW3, or even in the current iterations that we have in BO6 and BO7. And MW 2019 didn't even have a mantle. It was like you just jump in place and that's it. And unless it's, 3/4 your body, you can't mantle it. So this is kind of an evolution of that, and still feels grounded in reality with not feeling so sluggish as MW2. So that's I think an improvement there. So expanded movement, mantling, climbing, hanging, and jump create new opportunities. Yes, flank. I'm sure if the certain map design, you'll be able to have certain elements in there. Approach engagements with multiple angles across increasingly dynamic combat environments. Every movement system is designed to preserve the grounded realism, physicality, and combat intensity that define modern warfare, while delivering the fluid cinematic intensity of operating an elite soldier in the field, whether you prefer a methodical or tactical approach or an aggressive one. And that's like those specific elements. I think a lot of that's pretty interesting. They also, it looks like they've taken another look at how FOV works. This is the part that was the most confusing. I have to actually see this in action because they've done some things that make sense on paper, and then there's other things where it's like, I wish I could understand that. So apparently, for all of Call of Duty's history, and for most first-person shooters, even probably, I don't know, what happens is the FOV of the background operates different than the FOV on the gun. Even though we've had this setting in game, it never really actually lines up properly with the narrow or wide or whatever. And Call of Duty used to be kind of on a fixed FOV, so you weren't really even able to change it unless you were on a PC port. In today's day and age, everyone has it, even if you're on console, and this will be next gen only, so everyone will have access to FOV slider. With this particular case though, the FOV will also be tied with the weapon. So if you zoom out really far, your weapon will reflect that and how that FOV would look, and your gun will be more representative of real life, which is cool, again, for the immersion aspect. But one thing that they mentioned that I still don't quite understand is that the operator models in the world will still remain the same height. This is one thing that was really deceptive with the FOV when we first got access to it in MW 2019, is that you'd put it at wide FOV and the targets would be like all tiny, and when you ran, everything looked faster. So I think this should solve some of those types of aspects. And the character models, they used like 400 pixels high on this FOV. It's still going to be a character model that's this many pixels at the other FOV, which I'm not really sure how that works unless they got a weird scaling stuff going on. But either way, it should make it feel like all the characters and everything matches up in the world, and that you couldn't do some kind of weird stretch resolution to actually make your character models wider. I guess they're going to render the way that they should look, which is pretty good. One other aspect of the movement that I didn't mention, and it's not noticed here, is that they've did take that one, like I said earlier, they did take some aspects of the Omni movement, and that's like the supine prone is there, where you're kind of like can lay on your back, rotate around, but it's also designed into the slide. If you double tap the slide, you will be able to get into a slide where you're already on your back. Kind of what people were already doing in BO6 and BO7, where you kind of did that slide and then you stop your motion. You do kind of like a weird slide cancel into a prone, where you kind of had to do it. But now it's designed and baked in, where that if you double tap the slide, you'll automatically go into that motion and you'll be able to slide a little bit further. And it just makes more sense realistically. And one thing that they specifically said is they set out to make the most fluid and unrestricted movement system they had ever shipped as a studio. So this kind of means that they're going to the borderline without being too arcadey, which Treyarch tends to be, and I like that. But I also like a grounded system as well. I felt like MW2 was a little too grounded, and I didn't enjoy that COD at all, and there was other systems in the gameplay. But realistically, these are just the base foundation of the game, which all sounds good. It looked good visibly, but we still got to see how all those systems overlap with the way the leveling works, the new prestige system, that it's even further expanded, the way that the anti-cheat is going to work, the way that matchmaking is going to work, the way that the maps will play, how do the streaks, are they too high or too low? There's so many systems that stack on top of each other. But foundationally, I like what I'm seeing with a lot of these systems that are clearly designed to still make the game feel like you can do what you want to do within reason. And it's not like you're doing anything unreasonable. And it goes back to that foundational core. It feels like they grounded realism, which is like what they go for. So mission accomplished on there. And like I mentioned in a couple videos ago, there's so many checks that they have to go between now and launch. And everything they've done, check, 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 looking good. But we got like 75 checks to go until launch. And well, hopefully they execute on all those and apologize for some of their mistakes, because some of the tweets I'm seeing online that people that did go there, they were able to ask some questions, and basically sounds like they're going to own up to some of the mistakes they made in MW2 of acting like they listened to players, but you know, that they didn't really, they knew better than ever. So I'm interested in see where that goes, but I'm excited. So far, I wouldn't necessarily get the full hype train going just yet, but overall, it's looking pretty good, and we'll get some DMZ stuff in a couple weeks here with the Xbox press conference or whatever the hell it's called. And then we'll be rocking and rolling on that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and are looking forward to the next COD. If not, see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.